to have a room full of people and a Zoom room full of people who mean a lot to me and who I know care about me as well. And so thanks to each of you for being here and the role that you've played in my journey up to this point. So I'll start off my presentation today with just a little bit of my background. I'm originally from East Earl, Pennsylvania in Lancaster County, and I graduated from Garden Spot High School, and there I was a member of the Grassland FFA chapter. And so it was in that experience that I really got my start in agricultural education, and because of my experience there that I'm standing in front of you here today. And this picture is of me when I was at my very first National FFA convention. So it's special to think of the journey all the way from that point and even before to here today. And in the spring, I will be student teaching at Athens Area High School as my cooperating center, which is located in Bradford County, PA. So to map that out a little bit, you can see this slide here with home in Lancaster. Then I've spent the past 3.5 years at Penn State, and then we'll continue the slow northward climb up to Bradford County, up to Athens for the spring. And so before I go any further, I just thought I'd take a minute to review the 3-component model of school-based ag education, especially for those who might be newer to this. So that top circle, classroom laboratory instruction, is maybe the one that's the most familiar, thinking about the agricultural educator delivering instruction and allowing their students to engage in learning opportunities in both the classroom and the lab. Moving into that middle circle, or the blue one there, of FFA. FFA is a youth leadership organization that's rooted in agricultural education and allows students to develop those 21st century skills in leadership and teamwork. Then that final component, the red circle, of the supervised agricultural experience, you'll hear that abbreviated throughout the presentation as SAE. And this is a project that students in ag education get to pursue that's of interest to them and relates to their future career objectives. And so I'll talk in more detail about each of those 3 components, but wanted to provide a little bit of context there. And so I'll start the presentation today with the first question I'll address, related to opportunities that I've been engaged in that will have allowed me to develop and prepare to be a high-quality agricultural educator. And so starting right off the bat in some of my early experiences, as I mentioned, I am here today because of the impact of my own agricultural educators. And so I was fortunate to have 3 of them during my time in high school. Mrs. Heather Draw, Mrs. Ashley Pearson, and then that bottom photo of me with the Keystone degree is Mrs. Katie Rank. And I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the impact of Mrs. Jasmine Van Sant and Mr. Doug Mosser. They taught at a neighboring high school, Peckway Valley, and I interned with them during my senior year. They really helped to solidify that this is the career I wanted to pursue. As for my own supervised agricultural experience projects, I had the chance to work at my family's business, which was an independent convenience store and truck stop called Martin's Trailside Express. My grandparents own that business, and it's an honor to have them with me here today. And then also had the chance to, one summer, plant my family's garden area full of Indian corn for the summer, and then grow that and sell decorative bundles for fall decorations then. So applying those experiences in many different ways. After I graduated high school, I had the chance to take a gap year and serve as a state officer from 2019 to 2020. And I have some of my teammates here with me today and on the Zoom. Throughout this year, we really traveled across the state of Pennsylvania and to different parts of the US, advocating for agricultural education and the agricultural industry on the whole, working with business and industry representatives in schools and with legislators as well. In that middle photo, that's of me with Mr. Michael Brammer, Executive Director of Pennsylvania FFA, and it's an honor to have Mr. B here today as well. Also just wanted to share a little bit about my experience as the Pennsylvania FFA National Officer Candidate. I had the opportunity to have this role in 2021. And this was a meaningful experience for me. Every year, each state can send one person to compete for a spot on the National FFA Officer team. And I learned a lot in this experience, and many of you here in the room or on the Zoom supported me steadfastly throughout that. And ultimately, I was not selected as a National FFA Officer, which was a disappointment and was a dream that didn't come true during my time in college. And yet I learned a lot through that experience. And so I'm really grateful for what I've learned there about being resilient and how we adapt when things don't necessarily go according to plan or as we might have hoped. And I think I've learned a lot there that I'm excited to take with me into my future classroom that I can use to encourage my own students. So here at Penn State, I've had the chance to learn a lot, both in the agricultural and extension education program, and then also through some other avenues as well. One of them being the International Agriculture minor. I had the chance to serve as a teaching assistant for Dr. Noel Habashi in the introductory course to that minor. And then also just this past semester engaged in the senior capstone, where we talked about a lot of global agricultural concepts more in depth. I've also had the chance to have a Presidential Leadership Academy certificate. And in this program, I'll talk about it a little more later on in the presentation, but had the chance to learn from 2 university presidents, as well as the Dean of the Schreyer Honors College. So I give my thanks to Dean Mather, to Melissa, to Glory, to Lisa, who are in attendance for the role and the impact that you each have made in my life. To speak to a few key courses and assignments during my time here, first one I'd highlight is agricultural mechanics in the AEE program taught by Dr. Ewing. I did not have the opportunity to take agricultural mechanics courses in high school. And so as I'll be teaching a good bit of this in the spring, this has been very key for me. You can see my cohort member Emily and I with our plumbing project that we just completed last week. And to highlight another course, INTAG 297, this was a course on food security taught by Melanie Miller-Foster. And in this course, I had the chance to develop a food security project for an impact in my home community. And so I had the chance to work with the local food and nutrition center to help supply food resources to elementary school children on the weekends when there weren't other food resources available. And then Animal Science 201, taught by Mr. Dale Olver, learned a lot in that course. I didn't necessarily have a strong animal agriculture background coming in, but through very informative lectures and lab exercises, have learned a lot that I'll take with me into student teaching in that course. I've had the chance and been fortunate enough to conduct undergraduate research while I've been at Penn State. In May of 2022, I had the chance to travel to Nepal with a small group from the Global Teach Ag Network. And while I was there, conducted research and did interviews with 13 different science educators at 10 different schools about their educational resources and how they use them to teach effectively. And so this all has led to me working through my Schreier honors thesis related to using ag education as a means for helping to support communities and students in low resource environments. And so while I applied that in Nepal, excited to keep exploring those applications as I finish the thesis process. Just this past summer, I also had a chance to travel to Kenya in a short-term study abroad experience that really brought together, I would say, my two primary interests, those being youth education and development, and then also hands-on agriculture. And this was specifically through the lens of conservation agriculture. So I give my thanks to Dr. Short-Diker and Dr. Janelle Larson for helping to lead this course and provide me with this experience. So I was there, worked with a number of youth and children who had formerly lived on the street, and then helped to build some demonstration plots to model conservation agriculture practices to farmers in the local community. So learned a lot in this experience about working in global communities and international settings, as well as working with a variety of community partners. I've been fortunate to have some internship experiences during the summers away from Penn State's campus. The first one was with Corteva Agriscience, and there I worked as a corn research intern. I don't know if anyone in attendance has ever pollinated corn before. It's a job I think that everyone should get to do at least once in their life. It is a very hot job, very itchy, as there's like corn pollen falling all over you. But I learned a lot about how the crop science industry works and the tasks that are performed in that industry. So I'm grateful for that experience working for a large ag corporation. Then also had the chance to intern at Hope International, which is a faith-based nonprofit. So while I was there, I was conducting a review of farmer training programs and really got to see this intersection of agricultural development with economic supports as well as spiritual development. And I learned a lot there and had the chance to travel to the Dominican Republic with a small group of interns to see that work in person. I've also had the chance over my 3.5 years at Penn State to intern with the Global Teach Ag Network. And honestly, I really don't know Penn State without being a GTAN intern. I started here right at the start of my college experience. And there's a lot that I could say here, but I just want to especially say thank you to the Fosters for giving me all of these opportunities throughout my time here. I primarily worked to support teacher professional development programs. And while I've supported those programs and worked with a number of teachers, I've also developed professionally myself. Had the chance to work with great teammates and then also continue that research process, getting to travel and present the work that I've done. So I'm grateful for my internship with Global Teach Ag Network. And in terms of leadership experiences here at the Penn State campus, I'd highlight two main ones outside of the College of Ag Sciences, those being my work with student government through the University Park Undergraduate Association, and then also my time in the Presidential Leadership Academy. When I first came to Penn State, I don't know that I would have told you that I would have quite as strong of an interest as I do in how our university runs and how we as students can be involved meaningfully in that process. And in both of these organizations, I've gotten to meet people from all different corners of the university, from all different backgrounds, and learned a lot about their perspectives and experiences. And as I go into high school education at the secondary level, I'm really going to think about and take from these experiences how educational institutions can work effectively, even amongst some pretty big challenges. And so I'm really grateful for all of the people who have been a part of these experiences with me. And then within the College of Agricultural Sciences, also found a number of ways to stay involved, whether through recruitment as an ag advocate, whether engaging in policy-related discussions with Collegiate Farm Bureau or maintaining that connection to FFA through the Penn State FFA Alumni and Supporters Chapter. I've been grateful for all of the opportunities I've had through those organizations as well. Just to touch on a few quick experiences with learners that will allow me to connect with students from backgrounds different than my own. The first one that I talk about is the course Seed 497. And in this course, I had the chance to travel once a week to a local dairy farm. And while I was there, I was working with employees on the farm who had a desire to learn English. And so I would teach English once a week. I got to build some pretty special relationships with those who worked on the farm. I got to have some experience in responding to real felt needs within the agricultural industry as an educator, and gained some experiences working with both adult learners and then also English language learners as well. And then also the global orientation to agricultural learning. There'll be a lot of acronyms throughout this presentation. This one is GOALS. And in this program, it was a USDA funded program in partnership with the Global Teach Ag Network. And so in the fall of 2022, I had the chance to travel to Des Moines, Iowa and participate in the World Food Prize. I learned a lot about global food security and then had the chance to take that and apply it in a spring teaching immersion with students in central Minnesota. So got to build upon this experience and apply it in a setting of students in a state and a context far different than any I had known before. When I think about professional development opportunities, there's been a number of them during my time here. First and foremost, I highlight my involvement with the National Association of Ag Educators, first through their Teach Ag Ambassador program, where I got to work with a group of undergraduate students to represent our program in this field of agricultural education. And then just a few weeks ago in the Future Agri-Science Teacher Symposium, or FAST, and the whole cohort of Ag and Extension Education students got to attend that in Phoenix with a lot of programming related to teachers who are just beginning their student teaching journey. And then also got to attend a number of professional conferences, both related to research and then also just developing as a professional, those being with the Pennsylvania Association of Ag Educators, Agricultural Future of America, North American Colleges and Teachers of Agriculture, and the Association for International Agricultural and Extension Education. So I've been privileged to have a number of different opportunities with a number of different organizations. And lastly, for this question, I'll just touch on a few certifications that I'm excited to implement during my time spent student teaching. Perhaps with the exception of the first one, hopefully the need won't arise to need to use the first aid or CPR certification, but I'm grateful for the knowledge should it be necessary. And then in addition to that, knowledge related to parliamentary procedure, safe tractor and machinery operation, applying pesticides safely and how we do that, and can take that and apply it in my horticulture course. And then also OSHA 10 general industry, how we operate safely in the workplace. So with that, I'll move into the second portion of the presentation, which relates to who do I aspire to be as an agricultural educator. And to start this off, I thought I'd put up sort of a framework here that represents my teaching philosophy. And so you see in the middle part of this graphic, those three components coming back of classroom instruction, SAE, FFA. And above those components, I've tried to distill it down to, if I was forced to just pick one word for each of those, how I would describe it. So in the classroom, we learn, supervised agricultural experiences allow us to do, and then FFA teaches students to lead. And of course, you see the back and forth arrows there. These are not siloed things, but rather very interconnected. And ultimately, when a student is actively engaged in all three components, we have these meaningful outcomes at the bottom of informed consumers, understand and can make logical decisions about purchasing agricultural goods and services. We have globally minded ag leaders. And ultimately, you put those two together and you get positive transformation for communities. And if you're interested in seeing my full philosophy statement, you can scan that first QR code on the handout that you received today. To talk a little bit about classroom management, obviously managing a classroom effectively is important for an educator. So I have three different posters here that I've made for use in my classroom. The first one related to expectations, and these are really the values that I'll bring to my classroom and hope for my students to uphold as well. And I've chosen the acronym RICE for those to indicate respect, integrity, commitment, and excellence. So those are values I'll bring and have provided some specific ways that students can fulfill those expectations as well. Moving into procedures, this really relates to the routines and the sort of standard operating practices that the classroom will use regardless of the task at hand. So that relates to arriving on time, participating in class, all the way through the end of cleaning up the space and making sure we leave it as we found it. And the last one I'll touch on is classroom consequences. And these are not necessarily fun to talk about, but in many ways, I believe that to be clear is to be kind. And so setting forth those consequences so that students understand that if behavior is negative, that these are the consequences that will take place related to the frequency of the misbehavior, as well as the severity of it. So you can see those outlined there, and they are in accordance with the Athens Area School District's behavioral policies and consequences as well. To touch a little bit on a model program curriculum, this just goes as an overview of if I have the chance to design my own agricultural education program, what course offerings I would include for my students. So I'd start in the first year with a general introduction course to agricultural science, moving then into the second year with students having the opportunity to move into one of three primary pathways, those being animal science, plant science, or agricultural mechanics. And then in grades 11 and 12, you see a variety of different course offerings. And as a student myself, I really wanted to explore a variety of agricultural topics. I didn't necessarily want to be confined to one specific pathway. And so after my students have met that first and second level prerequisite, I would want them to have the ability to customize that experience as they best see fit for their future career. Touch a little bit on how we integrate learning by doing. I think a key piece of this for agricultural educators is making effective use of shop and lab facilities. And so an example here of a project that I would design for my students that I created with the help of my dad, and so I'm grateful for his help with this, is a tobacco lath degree frame. And so a couple different things here. First would be the connection to the agricultural industry. For those who might not be familiar with tobacco production, after tobacco is grown and it's ready to be harvested, you use this lath, which is this wood, to like put a spear through this sort of pile of it, and then ultimately that's hung in a barn to dry. And so that's a part of the local agricultural industry where I'm from. And so bringing in that connection, I feel is valuable. And then also the degree, as students put in a certain number of hours and time and money invested into their FFA and SAE experiences, they can earn these degrees at both the state and the national level. And so you earn these certificates that come with them, but they don't always come with a frame. And so having that connection and giving students something valuable to take away from it was part of the motivation for choosing this as my project. And when you price this out, it comes to about $13. So something that can be workable within a school budget. And this will allow students to get a variety of skills related to using different saws in the wood shop, learning how we assemble a small project like this, and then hopefully be able to display their hard-earned degrees with pride. Thinking about facilities, I had the chance to engage in sort of designing a dream facility. So what you see here is sort of a dream greenhouse. It's a big one, 48 by 36 feet. And in this greenhouse, and that I made using SketchUp, so thank you to Mr. John Seaman for his guidance there. There is a hydroponic system, which relates to growing plants without using soil. There's an aquaponic system, which is pretty similar, but it includes fish as part of the equation to manage nutrients. There'd be ventilation to maintain proper temperature and airflow, as well as growing tables for students to engage in conventional agricultural production. So you can see a few more photos here of the inside with the hydroponic system, and then that aquaponic system there in the middle with the PVC pipe and different layers of filtration. Then the growing table is growing herbs and flowers and a variety of different plants. When I think about integrating SAE, again, those supervised agricultural experiences, that starts in that introductory course with a foundational experience. And in this experience, students really engage in career exploration and identify areas of specific interest to them. And then as we move into those upper level courses, students would engage in immersion SAEs. And so these can look a number of different ways. Again, they're individual to each student. It can look like inquiry-based instruction, where students pose a question and then go out and solve it and find the answer. Like internships and co-ops, where students get real world experience learning from those who are currently in their chosen sector of agriculture. And then school-based enterprises. And these are projects that allow students to use resources at the school to engage in learning experiences. And I view these as pretty key to expanding access and equity for students so that students can have meaningful learning experiences and projects without needing to invest a ton of their own personal resources other than time. And then also AET usage, and AET stands for Agricultural Experience Tracker. So students would be able to use this to log their records, both financial and then journal entries of their projects. And I think that record keeping here is a skill that is important no matter where students go following their time in my program. And then also award applications. And we don't do things just to win awards, but for students who put in a lot of hard work, they deserve to be recognized for those. And so the AET platform there helps us to manage those award applications. When I think about integrating that third component of FFA, I think about advising an active and involved FFA chapter. And that starts with the chapter officer team, who's a group of students who've been chosen to lead. And I would encourage every member to be involved in at least one committee, because that's where the real work and involvement is going to happen for all of the students. Then I think about career and leadership development events and coaching my students to set them up for success in those activities, and having team practices frequently and bringing in outside people from industry who can help to coach those teams as well. Then the last point, as attending conferences and conventions at all the different levels, local, state, and national. These experiences were some of the ones that were most impactful for me. And so I'm excited to have my own students be able to engage in those experiences moving forward. And I think about program marketing and recruitment. It's important that we get the word out about the work that's being done in our agricultural education programs. So one of the ways that I've had the chance to do that this semester is by creating a program recruitment video. And if you would like to watch that, it's about a 4-minute video. You can see that at QR code 2 on the handout. Some other avenues, I think of holding school-wide events, making sure that the FFA has an active presence within the school is going to be critical to allowing all students in the school to understand what FFA is and how they could be involved. I think about newspaper press releases, of getting out that communication and making sure we're reaching audiences who are reading the newspaper, as well as then being active on social media, as that's where we can get a lot of traction and make sure that all the stakeholders, whether it's students, their parents, industry people, or just general community members, know what's going on. The last point I'll touch on here for this question is related to community integration and involvement. And I think this really starts by having an effective occupational advisory committee, or OAC. And this is a group of people from the industry who are brought together to help give guidance and direction to the agricultural educator on what should be taught within the program and what sorts of decisions should be made. So then I'd also think about expanding that to an alumni and supporters chapter that allows anyone who's interested in being involved in supporting the work of the program to be actively engaged in that way. I want my FFA chapter to be one that is involved in the community and giving back and help living to serve, as the FFA motto states. And so integrating service learning as a key part of my program will be critical. I'll think about bringing in those guest speakers and presenters. Again, as the ag teacher teaching full-time, I can't be an expert in all areas. And so I would rely heavily on those working in the industry to give that needed perspective. And then also applying for funding and securing grants. And with Athens so far, I've had the chance to apply for a Learning by Doing grant from the Pennsylvania FFA Foundation. So excited to keep finding avenues for funding to support a quality program. And so with that, we'll move into the final question, which is, how am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship opportunity? So as I mentioned earlier, I'll be student teaching at Athens Area High School. While I'm there, I'll have 2 cooperating teachers. My primary one will be Mr. Dave Steinfeld, who you see pictured there, and then also Ms. Sarah Beth Alderfer. There are 208 students enrolled in agricultural education at the high school, and they do have a very active FFA chapter. I had the chance to connect with some of the students over the summer at their local fair, and I've enjoyed getting to know all of their members. In terms of facilities, in addition to the 2 classrooms that they have 2 greenhouses that they use in their plant-related units of instruction. They have a pretty comprehensive agricultural mechanics shop, and then also some small and aquatic animals like this turtle that they use for animal-related instruction. So a little bit about my internship schedule. You can see here on the left-hand side of the slide an overview of what the day-to-day will sort of look like. At various points throughout the semester, I will be involved with 8 different courses throughout the day, sometimes observing, sometimes being the teacher. This is Mr. Steinfeld's classroom. They affectionately refer to this room as the Dave Cave. It is in the bottom of the school without windows, but anyway, this is where I'll be spending a good bit of time, and I'm excited to be there. I guess it will be Brandon's cave a little bit too, but the name doesn't ring quite as nice, but that's where I'll be spending my time. And so this is my internship schedule. So you can see, building in here some units, gradually sort of starting with some earlier on and then gradually picking up courses throughout the middle of the internship and slowly dropping back there at the end. Throughout the course of the internship, I will teach a total of 17 units, and all told, probably a little over 220 lessons. And up to this point, I've prepared a little over 45 of them to go and teach. And so if you're interested in seeing some examples of the unit and lesson plans that I've made, you can check out QR code 3 on the handout, and you'll see some examples from 2 different units there. When I analyzed my cooperating center and looked at some of the strengths that it has, first and foremost, I'd highlight the quality instruction that students get there. I really look up to Mr. Steinfeld and Ms. Alderfer as really high quality teachers. And that was one of the things that really drew me to the program, is that students are actively engaged and learning a lot in their classrooms. And so I'm excited to learn how to teach effectively from them. Also, strong community involvement and support. The Athens FFA chapter is very involved in their local community and have that good integration and support. And that's something that I look up to, and I'm excited to learn from them in that way. And then also the recruitment and marketing piece. When you think about getting the word out about the work that your students are doing and the learning experiences they're engaging in, I think they do a good job at promoting that, especially over an active social media. And so excited to continue digging into that strength while I'm there. When I think about areas for improvement, first, I think about SAE integration, and that's something that I'm excited to work on with the students while I'm there, thinking about how each student can have a meaningful project that is of interest and of value to them and where they hope to go in the future. And then I also think that a valuable project for me to be involved in throughout the semester will be helping to develop an FFA budget and thinking about how we fundraise effectively, how we use those funds to support a thriving and successful FFA chapter. As I reflect personally on where I'm at and some of my goals, I think some strengths that I bring to the internship this semester, but then also to the cohort of 8 of us who've gone on this journey together throughout the past year or so, is a commitment to excellence first. I strive to do everything that I do to a high standard and hold myself to that. And so I think that I bring that and hope to continue bringing that to student teaching. Also, knowledge and experience. As I shared today, I've been fortunate to have so many experiences both at Penn State and beyond. And so bringing those and leveraging those in my classroom is something that I'm excited about. And I also think about kindness and empathy. My own ag teachers and those that I've had the example to follow were kind people, and they were compassionate, and those are personal values of my own too. So I hope to be a person and a teacher that shows up for my students and is kind and helps them develop in that way and with that value as well. When I think about areas for improvement for myself, I think about perfectionism being one. I share that excellence can be a strength, but when you take that too far and let it border on perfectionism, it can really stand in the way of progress. And so continuing to work on that throughout student teaching is a goal of mine. Along with, I would say that connects to finding balance, both in work and life, that balance between perfectionism and excellence. That's an area that I can definitely improve upon. And then also agricultural mechanics again. As I mentioned, my high school ag program did not offer ag mechanics courses. And so having the chance to learn from Mr. Steinfeld, who is a very good ag mechanics teacher, is something I'm really excited about and grateful to have that opportunity. When I think about personal growth goals, a lot of these relate to those areas of improvement. I really want to expand my capacity for effective instructional planning. It's not an easy thing to put together units of instruction and comprehensive lessons and be super organized and do that in a time effective and efficient manner as well. So that's an area that I'm looking forward to continuing to growing in. Again, bringing back that agricultural mechanics knowledge, really looking forward to developing my own skill set so that I can more effectively teach students. And then classroom management, thinking about how you manage classes both in the actual classroom, but then also in the greenhouse and in the ag mechanics shop and all the extensions of the classroom. And so with that has taken care of the 3 questions, but I just wanted to take the time remaining in my program just really to say thank you to each of you who are here and all the people who've played a role in my journey. This song, this is just the lyrics to a chorus of a song that has meant a lot to me. It's called Cheering You On. It's by a group called For King and Country. So I thought I'll just take a moment to read these words. It says, I pray you'll be gracious in the fight of it, humble at the height of it, and choose to love in spite of it all. And when you're questioning the why of it, rise up in the light of it. I'll be by your side through it all. I'm cheering you on. So when I think about all the people who are here and the impact that you have made in my life and the people who've cheered me on, to the highs and the lows, and then also a lot of the in-betweens that come with college, I'm just really grateful. So, and I'm also excited, I'll back up real quick, excited to be a person that can hopefully cheer my own students on now as I get to go into the classroom and be the one standing beside them, just as so many of you have done for me. So first, I say thank you to my friends and the people that I've gotten to go through this experience with through so many different ways. Gotten to meet a lot of incredible people here at Penn State and people that I'll miss. So say thank you for that. I say thank you to my teams, both first team I had and my state officer team. We went through a lot of life together, and so grateful for all of those people, as well as my cohort. To each of you, you mean a lot to me. It's been nice to go through this journey together, as well as Penn State Team Ag Ed, both Dr. Foster, Dr. Ewing, Dr. Curry, and then to the staff as well, to Beth, to John, to Michelle. You all have been a good team, and I've enjoyed learning from you. All right, and then also to my family, thank you for all of your support in so many different ways. I would not be here without you, and so I just want to end really by saying thank you to you all and the impact that you've made in my life. One quick note with my 20 or so seconds. One fun fact that many of you may not know is that I have lived in a trailer for most of my college experience. And so there was a lot of work to be done. And so if nothing else, I say thank you to the 5 of you who are here for helping me have a place to live. Okay, and so with that, I will wrap it up and just again say thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brandon. I see the watermarks starting in parts of the room. We will open it up for the question and answer portion. Again, Maya will be monitoring our chat. We ask that those folks please put those in written so that we can relay those back out verbally to the rest of the folks here. Dr. Foster, would you like to ask the first question?
I did request that honor. Brandon, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for showing up. I do not say thank you for evidently making my life more difficult by not listing this incredible class of practical parliamentary procedure and instead listing a class on food security from my wife. But I'll have to deal with that
Sure.
at a different time. Brandon, I have a different type of question that I want to pose to you because I'm sincerely interested, based on your experiences, to hear how you would respond. So first, safe space. There is not a right or wrong answer. Okay. Brandon, you and I have talked and worked and we've done a lot of things, but as we propose and suggest to the world that school-based agricultural education can be a model that is effective for international development as a strategy to make the world a better place. The question is, what do you believe is the most limiting factor to that?
Boy, it's a good question. I think.
Well, that's what happens when you do such a good job on the presentation.
Yeah, you have to get into some more difficult territory for the questions. So there's a number of challenges. I think first and foremost, I'll just tie it back to the structure that we come from and that we know in school-based ag education here in the United States. And the amount of opportunities that are provided to students is incredible, but that doesn't happen without a lot of hard work and years of development of systems and structures that help to provide that. And in all three of those components that I talked about today of the three-component model. So when I think about trying to do that in an international context, I think sometimes it's hard for us to sort of step away from what we've known and grown accustomed to within the United States system of school-based ag education and think about how we even begin to take the first steps in implementing that in places where there's maybe not that same structure. With that said, I still think there's incredible opportunity for doing this through making sure that in schools around the world, I would say the first step is looking at that science-based instruction, which I've had the chance to explore through my research, and thinking about how we integrate agriculture and make it clear that agriculture is closely connected to science. And for many people is perhaps the most practical application of the science concepts that they're learning in schools that there could be. And so I think that's a start. Where it becomes more challenging then is building out the structure and providing the resources and just the support for students to engage in all these hands-on opportunities outside of the classroom.
Thank you for sharing, Brandon. I think there's a lot of people that have questions to ask, so I will not follow up, but I appreciate your hard work.
Yeah, Stefan.
Brandon, first, thank you for that presentation. It's been a pleasure to work with you throughout these past couple of years, just in my particular role. Throughout your presentation, there was a number of themes that emerged, right? Especially with regards to leadership, change management, culture. I can hear the servant and transformational leader that you are and will continue to be. In your ag program, how will you ensure that district and administrations not only see the value and benefits of an ag program, but the importance of supporting and sustaining it? I know you're going into a ag program that is rich, right? It has that foundation, but through your experience and your skills and the professional development that you're about to engage in, how would you help create that model for administrations and districts to see the value of sustaining those programs?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's an important one. And I would start by communicating the fact that FFA is distinguished as an intra-curricular organization. School administrators and those in leadership are going to be very familiar with extracurriculars and many times are trying to provide as many of them to students as possible. But FFA is unique. It just came up in some discussion this morning as the only organization declared by Congress as an intracurricular organization, meaning that integration of the classroom and lab instruction with the student organization, developing the leadership, teamwork skills, that they go hand in hand. And so that would be my initial message. And then as well as bringing in that theme of work-based learning, right? That's a big trend for those in administration of school leadership, and for good reason. But within the agricultural education world, we like to say, look, we've been doing this since 1928 when this all started with these supervised agricultural experience projects. And so relating it to the needs that we see, it's nothing new, but we can show that school-based agricultural education can address those needs. And I think that's how I'd approach it in communicating that sense of value.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sydney.
Through these few years that I've actually known you, I continue to be amazed by all the wonderful things that you do, all the things that you accomplish, as you clearly displayed them. But I also come from a family full of teachers who did the same thing growing up and continue to do the same thing and strive to achieve a really high level of personal education as well as education for their students. But in conjunction with that, I also tend to see personal burnout and how that affects their own students. So how do you plan on managing your own personal well-being while still being there, encouraging your students to achieve things without burning themselves out as well?
I love that you connected that to students too. Like that's, yeah. So I'll start with myself. I think one of the primary ways that I would combat some of those challenges is tapping into the incredible network that is agricultural education, especially within the state of Pennsylvania, also elsewhere. But I mean, that's what I know. This is where I'm from, and the community that really is what inspired me to pursue this career. My own ag teachers, but then as I've had the chance to get to know agricultural education across the state, all the people who are involved within this world are incredible. And so leaning upon them and just going through it and knowing that there's going to be a lot of hard work that needs to be put in, but tapping into these like foundational relationships and people who have invested so much in me and will continue to do so, and knowing that I can do the same for other people, I think can be a first step to helping with the burnout when it comes to my own responsibilities. And I'll just quickly note, also having those people to hold you accountable to maintaining some of those boundaries, people who are all in it together and know what it's like. For my students, I really appreciate you brought that up, because FFA can take a lot of a student's time. And for people who are balancing a lot of different demands, they might be trying to work a part-time job, also maximize their FFA opportunities. Maybe they're also playing a sport. It can definitely lead to burnout for my students. And so thinking about how I would make my FFA chapter one that, while there's an expectation for students to be actively engaged, one that understands that I want them to be well-rounded people. I don't want FFA and ag education to consume every single moment that they have in their lives, and appreciating that and valuing that, I think, is something that's important to me. How I put that into practice is can be difficult when you're working with competing schedules, but that would be the philosophy I'd take into it. Maya.
You have one from Katie Rank. Says, Brandon, as always, I'm very proud of you. Now for your question. As you enter the classroom, knowing we need more agricultural educators, how will you encourage your students to consider agricultural education as a career?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Miss Rank, Dr. Foster was clapping. You probably couldn't see him, but thank you for the question. So I think first and foremost, it starts by modeling the impact that an ag educator could make in someone's life. To get like choked up again, but Mrs. Rank was my ag teacher, just in case those who don't know or don't remember that from the first slide. So, I mean, I'm here because of the impact of my own ag teacher. So it just goes a lot when you model that and you model what the difference it can make when you invest in a student's life. So that's the first approach. But in addition to that, I think talking about it and talking about the need that we have for agricultural educators and helping students understand that, at schools just like ours all around the state and across the country, that there's a need for people to go and teach this stuff. And so for students who enjoy it, who like working with people who care about the agricultural industry and the future of it, I think there's not really a career that allows you to work with as many future agriculturalists and really invest in the future and have such a multiplicative impact, far greater than what any one person could on their own. And so communicating that message to my students and then allowing them to be involved in as many different things as possible related to FFA and ag education, I think that's going to build the groundwork to hopefully inspire them to pursue this profession too. Yeah, go ahead.
So I noticed that one of your goals was to prepare globally minded agricultural leaders. but I didn't see in any of your units of instruction or the examples that you gave for SAE or FFA, I didn't see global or international anywhere. So how would you prepare globally minded agriculture leaders?
Yeah. So one of the units that I'll have the opportunity to teach a little bit in, it won't be a full unit. It'll be connected with the public speaking unit. So there'll be public speaking and then some global agriculture integrated as well. And so I think at first I was a little interested in how am I going to do this effectively to find this balance while students are working on speeches or perhaps memorizing the FFA creed, which for those who might not be familiar is basically sort of a statement of values and something that a lot of times students will memorize early on in their FFA careers. And, I think as I thought about it more and planned these lessons for instruction, I really thought about how do I equip students to have the knowledge of global agriculture, but then also advocate for it. And as they write these speeches, think about the connections of whatever they're writing their speech about, how it connects to on a global scale and to things in other countries beyond just what they know in the United States. And so I think both having it as a specific topic, but then also integrating it into the other projects and assignments that students might be doing as they learn is important. And so one of the immediate ways I'll do that is through the speeches as students write those and do some research for different agricultural topics, but looking forward to continue exploring ways to do that.
And you spoke in your presentation, and many of these questions center around the challenges that we face in agricultural education, broadly defined. But you're a bright young man. What are your ideas? How do we peek around the corner and be proactive as a profession to avoid some of the challenges that we face with teacher shortages and all the things that you addressed in the questions that we talked about? What can we do to be proactive as an industry, as a profession, to be proactive in that regard?
Sure. Sorry, really quick. Battery on this is just about out, but hopefully it will last the time that we have remaining. I think about a few different things. One of the ones that really does come to mind is that I'm fortunate to have come from a state that has a land-grant university with an agricultural education program. And so I could stay in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, go to the land-grant university in the state and be certified in an undergraduate program to be an ag teacher. That is not necessarily the case in every state, especially when you look to the states to the north and east of us. And it's not necessarily through any fault of their own, but I think that's something that I don't know if I have a perfect answer to it, but it's something that really I think about sometimes is, man, would I have been in this program if I was from a different state that I had to travel out of state to pursue this degree? And I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I hope that maybe I would be, but I don't know. So I think about that being a challenge for our profession, not just in the New England states, but around the whole country, thinking about how do we make sure that these opportunities are as accessible as possible to students who are interested in teaching ag, regardless of where they're at. The second piece that I'll highlight here is there's been a big shift in ag education. Back in the day, it was primarily male dominated, almost exclusively. Whereas when we come to the modern day, there has really been a big shift so that it is now a majority female as a profession. And I think both male, female ag teachers can have an incredible impact in their classrooms. I mean, my own experience is a testament to that, regardless of their students. But one thing that I think is important to note is that there has really been an absence of male students in ag classrooms in certain places across the country. And so it's an interest and something that's sort of close to my heart of thinking about how do I be a positive male role model for my students who, for a number of reasons, maybe they haven't had that before, especially thinking about how we recruit male ag teachers to the profession when they're declining in number, while certainly not excluding female ag teachers as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So you hit a lot of your experiences, and I know there's other things beyond that.
Yeah.
When you mentioned your values, and so you kind of been talking about this in general, but do you mind talking about how are you different as a person? How is Brandon standing here today different from Brandon who showed up or logged on, I guess as it was?
Yeah.
In fall of 2020, is that right?
Oh yeah. 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 I'm in many ways, I'm not the same person as I was when I started college. And yet I also think I'm grateful for the things that have clarified and the things that have sort of remained true throughout my college experience. In terms of what's changed, I think I have learned a lot about global agriculture first and foremost. I point to that as something I had a general interest in before coming to Penn State, but I didn't know how big of a piece it would be during my college experience, and that I would have the chance to travel to 2 countries specifically with Penn State related things, and then to some more countries even beyond that during my time in college. And so thinking about the global connections and having a broader perspective of what I mean, certainly have a lot yet to learn, but thinking about the understanding that I've gained of how our world works and in small ways, I'm grateful for that. I think I've learned just a lot about how we as people are different. I think about all the people, and I highlighted a lot of them, that I've gotten to know and work with during my time in college. And I think just about the unique things that I've learned from each one of them. And I could spend hours and hours talking about that, but just how we work together as people, how we're different, and yet also the things that are the same for us as well, and sort of what unites us as people going through life. I think I've learned a lot about that too.
There was a question that came in via text. Dr. Tobin Redmond from South Texas wanted to ask you, how many countries could you list in 15 minutes?
Oh my goodness.
That's a joke.
Not as many as you, Dr. Redwine.
That's a joke, but I know we're running out of time.
I will say that we could probably ask questions of Brandon for the next hour and a half. We probably all be entertained, but we can probably let him off the hook because he's been on the dime for the last 15 minutes. So can you all congratulate him? Coming and celebrating his and all of our candidate successes. We're going to continue our exam.